going to be the block or the bite or the barrel holdy thingy. Not often, but on occasion, I've been accused of being a smart man. And for being such a smart man, I have really bad luck with thinking. The thought that I had for the past 10 years is, what if I had a really nice 100-plus-year-old Parker shotgun? And I finally got one. It's got a nice strong lockup, including a doll's head. Unfortunately, they made this one in 12 gauge, which is one of these, and it comes with Damascus barrels, which are these lovely things. So I have to use black powder, and your standard loads will just Elmer Fudd this thing all over the place. I didn't like that it came in 12 gauge. I wanted it in a rifle caliber. If it's not supposed to work, it's not supposed to fit. Case in point, doesn't quite fit. Now, I don't have a lot to live for, but if I didn't come home one day, my dog would be very confused about it. So we'll call this like Plan B. Plan A is this. 4570 government. Halfway decent dangerous game load, and I'm high 80s, low 90s% sure that this action will take it. Step 1, hiding inside this still extremely hot chunk of hardenable steel, is what's called the bite. So in order to preserve these nice Damascus barrels, we're going to make this part right here out of this thing right here, and then be able to screw in our rifle barrels. And if everything goes well, I get to live to tell about it. Welcome back to the Project 4570 Parker shotgun. Started off with a new mono block. A couple of reasons for that. This one was suspect. It came from the Lost and Found or Land of Lost Toys. Didn't know what it was made out of, and I wanted the strongest steel that I could, so I started off with a new block at 4570, and then promptly threw half of it away after machining it out. Or 4140. Now, if you squint a little bit and you use your imagination, somewhere inside of here, this section right here is hiding. Now, the tricky bit is going to get all of our lockup points on here to look like that. So we put some inletting black on here and made ourselves a little stencil. If you don't have inletting black, just use your sharpest crayon and all of your careful for the week. I tried to get it to just directly transfer, but no such luck. Notice that I didn't carve out right here because that's going to be our reference point for where this is going to line up. So we're going to get that transferred on there, and then using up the rest of our careful for the week, we're going to chip this out with the mill to get it roughed in. Go leave everything a little bit fat because this gets to be hand fitted, and we're going to get our little smoke pot and smoke some pot at it and carve off whatever rubs off from the smoke lamp. We're in for a rare treat today where you get to see me lose my mind in real time. So we have a monoblock here that needs to fit our action exactly. Now, I don't have the drawings for it, I don't know any of the dimensions, I can't measure it, and I can't see what I'm doing. So the only way to do that is to smoke and fit. So what one does to do that is you get Nathan Hale's tactical flashlight from the 1700s, and you get a good flame going. It's going to blow carburizing smoke everywhere, all over the shop and all over your hands and all over your glasses. And we're going to smoke and soot all of our contact points. And then we get to insert it into our action. And we can see just there and just there and just there are its contact points, which are too high and need to be filed off. And then we get to do that several thousand more times. So when you wonder, why is a nice shotgun about $2,000 and a nice double rifle somewhere between the cost of your first house and your last car? You're not just paying for the hours. You're paying for the years of experience and education that it took to get to that point. And the little chips of my sanity that fall off of this monoblock as I'm fitting it. And also probably like some alimony or child support too. So what you're seeing here, you know, if it fit, is what a master gunsmith can do in a day. This is taking me all damn week. Now I just got to file off that little bit. All right, welcome back to the shop. It's just after Christmas. We're getting back into the 4570 dangerous game gun here. And for a channel with such a small reach, we have had just an incredible outpouring of interest in this project. So for the both of you that have liked and commented and subscribed, here's what we're up to. I've almost, but not quite, got the monoblock fit to what's left of our action. 5,000s here, 10,000s here. In my world, that's something that you can drive a truck through, but the problem that we're running into is we've got this big flat space up here where it's not really giving me a whole lot of data on what has to go away. So I took this special opportunity and we're drilling out for the barrels and we're gonna tap them too. You can see that we're more or less done with the right side barrel, and then we're gonna move on to the left. Generally, when this is done, so I'm told, you only tap about halfway through for a couple of reasons. One, this is kind of a pain. And two, you want an awful lot of solder in there. You can't get the torque on it that you could with a single barrel bolt action. We're going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to tap all the way through, and we're going to undersize the barrel just a little bit, 5 or 10 thousandths maybe, to make sure that we can get a lot of solder penetration in there, because and when a barrel comes off when you're staring down a water buffalo, that is embarrassing for everyone involved, the buffalo included. So for right now, we are tapping this by hand. If I was a more confident or competent machinist, perhaps we could power tap this. Or if I had the right tools, you know, an actual tap handle with 2 handles on there. But I can't be bothered to go and find one. So here we are, stuck doing this by hand. I guess about the only other thing that you could do to make this easier on yourself is go and find somebody to do it for you, but unfortunately, they're still on Christmas break. Some tap water, pluck for tapping. I've got really low self-esteem, guys, so if you could do me a huge favor, tell your friends about the channel. Get as many people as we can following along on this. I love to hear your comments. A little bit of show of support always goes a long way. And the best part is it doesn't cost you anything, and more people get to watch me go through my trials and tribulations with this. So I placed this hole precisely where I wanted it to be. That drill bit was within the thousands. And precision is great, but it's nothing without accuracy. Love to have a sub quarter MOA gun. We all would. That doesn't mean much if your dime-sized shot group is on your buddy's target. So hopefully this is in the right spot. All right, that looks almost straight, and I have enough teeth left to probably make the second barrel cut. Welcome back to the top secret R&D facility off the C470 in Ken Carroll Avenue in Littleton, Colorado. It's been a while since our last update because my lovely and talented camera crew has been off hawking hats, much like this fine one, and gallivanting around trade shows. This one is Hecho a mano, which is Spanish for made out of hands. In that time, we've gotten a lot more done on our 4570 double rifle here. For instance, I have barrels now, which does qualify it as a rifle. We've also got our extractors fit. For the most part, they're still a little snug in there, but we're going to clean that up on final fit and fit up, much like our little bit rough breech face here. But the big accomplishment for today is that little hooky bob right here. Now, if you're looking at that thinking that's a fine bit of buffoonery that you handcrafted there, you'd be wrong. Somebody else did. And it was the original manufacturers of the shotgun. I wanted to save these barrels, I really did. I wanted to have a 2-barrel set here. But one, these are Damascus barrels, meaning that they will not handle modern loads without banana peeling on me. And they've also got a pretty good dent in the side. Not that that's a problem normally, but it's a sharp dent which creates a stress riser which makes these barrels suspect. So these are probably going to end up on eBay minus a few parts. Now it doesn't work completely yet. It still needs a little bit of fit and finish in there, mostly some fitting. This little hook controls our cocking mechanism for the hammers. And if it can't go through its entire field of motion, one, you're never going to get your hammers cocked, and two, you're never going to get your barrels off, which is suboptimal. But one thing that I am incredibly proud about is it does actually lock up with all parts and makes an audible click. Now, all the gunsmiths back here were incredibly impressed with that, especially me. I didn't know that I had it in me. Everybody up front was less impressed, but one of them I'm pretty sure has a coke nail on his foot, and another one hot glues eggs to bread. Not that there's anything wrong with either one of those things, but clearly they've got a lot on their mind. So it's just not that they have poor taste, it's that they have no taste. Next step in the process is going to be getting this all put back together and to a somewhat functioning condition. And I'm as excited as you to see if we can fire these off with just some primed brass and see if we can or can't puncture a primer with it. Till next time. All right, we're back here again at the top secret R&D facility off C470 in Ken Carroll. I've had an opportunity to assemble what I've got, and it doesn't matter how beautiful your firearm is. This one's not yet, but if it doesn't work, it's just a handsome paperweight. We are going to validate both whether or not the action still works, because I didn't test that before I bought it, and give myself a little bit of validation, see if everything locks up and we can actually strike some primers. We want to find out if it's going to puncture the primers. Not as big a deal with your shotgun, super duper low pressure, But when you're talking about a dangerous game gun, or at least a hazardous one in this case, a punctured primer will push all the force, all that pressure back through the action. And unless you have bushed firing pins, you have about 100 bespoke toothpicks entering your hand at several hundred feet per second. So we want to figure out if that's going to happen, and if we have to do any modification to this to make it, safe. So it's not functioning to the point yet that it'll do things like manually cock the hammers, but we at least have lockup, and apparently it fires. So hooray me. Man, how big a pain would this be if you missed with your first 2 shots and now the lion that you're hunting is just angry? So as we can see, we've got good penetration there. We're not backing out the primers too bad. And above it all, we didn't puncture them. I think we might be on the right track. There's a small but distinct possibility that this gun might actually be finished on time. All right, so here we are back at the mill, very first thing Monday afternoon. It's about time to make it so that we can no longer take the barrels out. We are getting to that point in our life where we're gonna have to start welding things in and actually working on completing this project. The ribs are on order, should be here within a week or 2, fingers crossed. Sling studs are on order, should be here in about the same time frame. We have the 4-end hook made and ready for installation. So all that's really left to do before we start soldering and welding things in is to polish the barrels and to start skinning up our monoblock, because a big sharp chunk of square steel kind of takes away from the hand fit appeal of a bespoke double gun. This is one of those points where things could go sideways in a hurry, and one little mistake means we're starting all over, which is why we're doing it early in the day and early in the week. There's absolutely no point in pissing about all day doing fine work only to get to the very end and cock it all up to where you have to start over. If you're going to be anything, be efficient. Now you may notice that we've got a bit of an angle here. If you remember from one of the earlier installations, the angle of this block is not 90 degrees. It is not square. It's 89 degrees, and that's because that's how our action is shaped. So we have this propped up at about 1 degree, as close as my Harbor Freight angle finder will tell me, so that we get that nice flat surface all the way across, and we'll be able to finish with a file, and I'll be able to come in here and peen the block into the barrels, hopefully hiding the joint line. There we have it, a bit of a rough cut. This particular carbide is getting towards the end of its life cycle, but We left ourselves a nice wide spot up there so we can blend it into what will become our top rib once those show up. Plenty of meat on there for me to still make mistakes and walk everything in by hand. All right, another day has passed and our New Year's resolution of weight loss is going quite well. So you remember from yesterday, we had this in the mill, trying to hog off as much material as possible. We had the knee all up in the air as far as it would go, the head kicked back. It was like a 2,300 pound rocket. So let that replace the screaming clown in your nightmares. Once that was done, I took that and all the careful that I could find in the shop over to the belt sander. We didn't get any video of that because my cameraman was in his weekly meeting with the big boss where he takes out special time to talk crap about all the gunsmiths. But there I was trying not to violate the leading edge or the trailing edge or the top edge or the bottom edge, while also managing not to let the belt sander violate my fingers well in the dark. Now that all that's done, the rest of it's fit with a file. We're going to get this down just as close as we possibly can before we fit the barrels. There's certain areas like up in here and up in here that are going to be really difficult with barrels installed. More concerned about the action edge because the barrels I can still polish. The action is already engraved. I'm not allowed to touch that. But we're doing pretty good for now. Haven't violated any edges yet. I can still save this project. We're down to about 15 ounces and change in our monoblock, 6.5 pounds with our 24-inch barrels. As a reference, we started off with 7.5 pounds of steel. When I started this, I was wondering why double rifles were so expensive. I mean, the wood is beautiful, the action's really nice, but you can get a pretty decent side-by-side shotgun in the $2,000 range where you can't really touch these for under 15. It's not just the amount of material that's left on the shop floor, and it's not the gunsmith's skill and sanity and time that goes into it, but I have already destroyed 3 brand new Nicholson files in the course of this project. A lot of this just has to be done by hand, and there's no other way without having a CNC machine where you're starting from scratch with your own design. So yeah, I understand why these are $15,000 guns now. I'd like one for myself someday, so if you watch this far, you owe me something. It really helps out the channel. Till next time. So inside our precision and purpose-built test rig over here, we have most of an African double rifle. Before we go ahead and do our very first fire test, I'd like everybody to take a look at just how well this monoblock has been blended into the action and into the barrels. It's not perfect yet, we still have to do our final polish, but I'd just like everybody to see, just in case this does blow up, all the handwork that went into that. No machine can help me out here, at least not one that I have. Everything has to be done by hand. It is a job that must be done by hand. There's a name for that, some sort of term for a job that must be done by hand. If you think of it, put it down below in the personal section. So we're going to go ahead and test fire this. Part of making any double barrel is the proof test, because you're not just showing that the barrels are in good shape and able to hold the pressure, but the action and everything else as well. And a good craftsman always has faith in his work and knows if it's going to explode or not. To show that I've got so much faith, I'm not even going to be wearing body armor when I set this thing off, but I will be in another room. So using all the careful that I've got left, we'll lock this thing together. And it has really good triggers on it, so very carefully, we're gonna run this string out. Man, do I hope this works. 3, 2, 1. See how we did? Well, it's still in one piece, and we may have even hit the target. Let's test the other barrel with more confidence. All right, it's still in one piece.
Congratulations.
Looky there. All right, if you're seeing this video on X or Instagram about a week ahead of it's being posted on YouTube, there's a fine reason for that, and that's because we got in trouble. Apparently, YouTube thinks that we have been instructing people on how to make firearms, which is a load of crystal grip and hippie crap because, one, I doubt anybody has learned anything from watching me ever. And two, we're not instructing you on how to make firearms, we're instructing you on how firearms are made. That being said, it has been a couple of days since our last update, and a lot has happened in that time. For instance, we've gone from a fairly blocky chunk of metal that looks like it was gnawed with a dull apprentice with an angry beaver into something approaching a gun. Many hours of painstaking fitting, filing, refitting, because I am just terrified to put a scratch in this nice engraving on the receiver. We have it almost finish shaped with about the best 80 grit polish one could ever hope for. Once the barrels are regulated, then we can go into our finish polish with something a little bit finer than, a brick. And that'll come right down to be a flawless finish and match up perfectly where it's definitely not going to snag on your thumbnail or your pinky nail or your toenail, however you want to do it. I want to talk about the elephant in the room sitting right on top of the gun. Now, we have all done things that we're not proud of, myself especially. I've got some skeletons in my closet. Hell, I've got skeletons raiding the fridge in the middle of the night. And this is one of them. This is one of those sins against firearms that is close to, but not quite the equivalent of thinking that your grandpa's World War II take-back Garand would look excellent with a rattle can camo job. I'm going to be regulating these barrels, and I need some way to kind of sort of guess that I'm pointing them in the same direction when I pull both triggers. Not at the same time. I want to live, I guess. So we're going to put a red dot on this. Not just any red dot. Not a hollow sun, not even a Haro sun. We've got an Aerotech, not an Eotech. Timu's finest. So we'll put that on there so I can get this aimed and get the barrels to agree in which direction they ought to be pointed. We're also just about done with the stock. The fit up is great. The recoil pad is on there and the finish is almost where I want it. The sling stud is still persisting in its absence, but it'll be here presently. I'll be able to locate that and then fix any chips that may occur in the meantime and do the finish polish on it. I've been using this forend the entire time. I haven't gotten around to sanding, polishing, and refinishing that, but fingers crossed when that's all done, both of these pieces of furniture will look just as good and be beautiful, match the rest of the gun. One of the biggest problems we ran into is failure to cock the hammers, which is important because it is, to say the least, inconvenient when you need a second set of rounds for a stampeding wildebeest or an ex-wife, and you have to take the whole gun apart, remove the stock, remove the sears, recock the gun, put everything back together before you get trampled. But now, it does cock. The reason why it wasn't was this little guy right here, our cocking hook. Now we could take some pretty close measurements off the original barrels, but we couldn't get it quite perfect, so we had to do a little bit of guessing. And so we just had to make that little bit of engagement there a little bit better. And then Sam got a hold of it and broke it. And so we have to make that engagement a lot sturdier, because if he can break it, I'm sure that anybody else can. Now that that's done, we have what is approaching a functioning rifle. Next step in the process is being able to get our regulating blocks in. The left one is already in there, and the second one is ready to go. We've done what's called tinning here before we solder it in, which is basically applying the solder to where you want it to be, put it there, and then heat it up. Now, when generally speaking you solder something, the solder will flow to the hottest part. If I'm soldering it, the solder will flow to anywhere but where I want it. So we start the process by just putting it where we want it, putting it together, adding heat, and hoping for the best. All right, eyes, ears, move your beers. All right, we got the solder to flow out. We're just gonna hold it there and let it think about what it's done while it cools off to the point that it'll actually stick together. I made these about 20 or 30 thousandths narrower than I think that I'm going to need. Reason for that being, one, I don't know what these barrels are gonna do, because the left barrel is gonna be pinned on the right side, the right barrel is going to be pinned on the left side, and the harmonics are not going to be equal. So those rounds are, it's anybody's guess on where exactly they're going to strike. I'd like them to be a little bit narrow so that they run a little bit closer to each other and intersect at some point, so that I can spread them back out with shims and then solder it all together when it's done. There are two schools of thought when regulating barrels. The first one being, you can have the bullets intersect at a given distance, 50 yards, 75 yards, 100 yards. The other one being that you want them running parallel out into forever, or because this is a 45-70, about 400 or 500 yards before you end up hitting the dirt. I'm going to make them regulated so that they are running parallel to each other. It's not going to be as accurate or as precise as if they were going to close in and meet at a particular distance, but it's still going to be within a minute of upload, which is really the goal of this. These are short range, very fast guns, not made for long range accuracy. You just want to be able to put an animal down and do it ethically. To keep everything where we want it, we're going to use this Jose clamp. I guess was pioneered by the Spanish or Portuguese, hence the name. But that's going to be our redneck way of holding everything steady while we get the barrels regulated and get them into agreement of where they're pointed in relationship to the sights. Then we'll go ahead and finish soldering our regulation block, put in our top rib and our bottom rib, and if everything goes to plan, they should still be pointing in the same direction once we go to put in our safari sights. And I can mill off this god-awful thing. Cool, it's still a bit spicy. We're gonna wait for that to cool. Right side, left side. So we are not exactly where we would like to be, so I'm going to make that a little bit skinnier. The elevation can be adjusted by throwing some MAN on the end of the barrels and then tightening the hose clamp. But even at the length of the shop, which is about 25 yards, we're not exactly pointing where we want it to. So I'm going to have to take one of those off again and smallen it a little bit and try and get them pointing a lot closer together. Again, with a real round, we have no idea what the heck is going to happen. But just like most of the rest of the country, we got hit by one of them there bipolar vortexes. And it's going to be 65 by this weekend here, and I have no desire to stomp through ankle-deep mud at the range all day when I can just put a couple down the pipe, decide that it's good, solder it together, and we can all move on with our lives. Welcome. Today finds us out at our semi-private test range, the Golden Gun Club, which for urban sprawl reasons is nowhere near Golden, Colorado. And today's big task is we will be regulating the 4570 project. We're going to start our regulation out at 25 yards. Hoping to work out to 100 today, but if I don't have to go back to Walmart and get myself a king-size sheet just to figure out where I'm patterning, today's going to be a good day. We're going to be working with two different kinds of ammunition today, Lever Revolution from Hornady and Winchester Super X. Now, once this is done, whichever rounds it seems to like better and gets regulated with, that's going to be imprinted right on the barrels. Whenever you're dealing with a double gun, it's not just the caliber that's important, it's the actual load, because we've got two barrels tied together and they're going to be absolutely picky about what sort of ammunition you put in there. We finally got our TMU Special EOTech mounted. First impressions are that the quick disconnect does leave a little bit to be desired. It is neither quick nor does it particularly like to disconnect. But looking through the reticle, it's about 100 times clearer than an actual EOTech. So for 40 or 50 bucks, this might actually be a deal. Let's see if this thing is going to hit for me or if I'm just going to turn this stock into a bunch of toothpicks moving at 100 miles an hour. Well, so far so good. So we have our target here, and as best as we can tell, this was our right barrel, and this was our left barrel, which is about as much as I could hope for. It is far easier to adjust elevation than it is to adjust windage. That's just grabbing a hold of it and orking the barrels a little bit. We are going to adjust our sights over to the right and then start using a lead sled, because as I found out, I don't really get a cheek weld with that EOTech sitting up so high. It's more the bottom of my beard weld. So in an effort to be just a touch more accurate, we're going to cheat a little bit. But for first shots, not too bad. Gentlemen ready? All right, so after a bit of dicking around and messing with the EOTech, we're more on paper, and we have our right barrel hitting here and our left barrel hitting here. Unfortunately, I was aiming here, but that's neither here nor there. So what we have is barrel spacing of about 1 inch and bullet travel from left to right of about 1 inch, which means we got about 4 inches of travel there at 25 yards. So if we do some math and pull out the calculator and figure out that we did it wrong and then ask Google, it tells us that we need about 4 thousandths of spread between those barrels, which is about the width of a human hair. So we made ourselves a little shim out of the shim stock, crammed it in there, and tried to keep the barrels just as level as we possibly could. Made some adjustments to our sight, and we're going to try it again. Now this isn't too bad right here if what you're shooting at is only 25 yards away, but by the time we get out there to 100 or 150 yards or even 250 yards, you could bloody its nose and crop its tail in the same shot, even holding center mass. So let's try to avoid that, shall we? So 4 thousandths wasn't quite enough. 6 thousandths looks like it ought to do the trick. Hopefully. So every time we make an adjustment, we're not just changing how far the barrels are apart. They also go back to their original position of where they are in the vertical plane, which puts us back to square one. And truth be told, because somebody hid the highly calibrated angle cube from me, I just kind of eyeballed when I was making these regulation blocks, so they are not completely parallel to each other. But when it's all said and done, that really doesn't make a difference, because it's all going to get machined down, hidden by a rib, and polished out. All right, still shooting at the center. Right barrel and left barrel. Still on the top target, still shooting at the center. Right barrel and left. All right, so the top target was starting to get a bit busy. We moved down to the bottom target. This is our first shot out of the right barrel, first shot out of the left barrel. So they were still crossing. We made some adjustments. So this is our second left shot that is actually on the left side of the target now. And the right second shot, which is on the right side. So we made just a hair of adjustment. I would like those hit in parallel, but less than an inch apart. That is good to go in Great Britain. Send that $100,000 rifle. Following an extremely productive day at the range, where not only somehow did we get our double rifle regulated within 40 rounds, we were also able to develop a load for a customer's 8mm Magnum, which is another service that we offer here. We're going to follow that up today by getting this thing ribbed for our pleasure. We're working on our hollow ribs now, which is going to be the bottom ribs. And things in this rifle, just like everything else, is getting better all the time. Gas is cheaper than it used to be, and nobody's heard any of Mariah Carey's Christmas albums for at least a month. We're going with some pretty fat hollow ribs on here. I think it gives it a much more finished look. And also the barrels taper on a double rifle an awful lot more than they will on a shotgun. That makes me happy because it's a lot less work to fit it. The way we're going about fitting these is using up about a week's worth of Careful and a belt sander. And although this rib fit perfectly when I started, somehow I managed to file on a little bit of extra material. But once we get this soldered in, it'll fit perfectly, and we will just have to go through it and do a little bit of finish sanding, make sure that there are no sharp burrs on there, and that everything looks smooth and finished. The idea being that once this is done, it looks like this entire barrel set was machined out of one piece of steel. So we're going to start here at the front. I want to make sure that the front of the barrels, where our regulation block is sitting at, gets soldered in first. I am just absolutely terrified that this is going to let go and we're headed back to the range and start from scratch. Now, just like a grinder and paint makes me the welder that I ain't, when it comes to soldering, you're either good at soldering or you got to be good at sanding. Maybe by the end of this project, I'll be good at both. All right, So we've got our hollow ribs completely soldered in, both before and after our locking lug here, or locking hook. You can see that I clearly didn't do future me any favors with having to sand and file all the excess solder out. But that guy's never done anything to help me, so I don't really feel bad about screwing him. Now we've got this completely sealed. That's going to help to keep moisture out of this throughout the bluing process, or even in the field in case you happen to be hunting in inclement weather. And before we go, I just want to say, if there's anybody from YouTube watching this about ready to demonetize us and give us another ban for sharing forbidden knowledge, if you're going to do that, at least throw a like at us. We'd really appreciate it. All right, so future me is now present me, and we're both versions of me are hoping that past me stubbed his crotch on the end mill, because that was a lot more work into fitting, filing, and cleaning up these hollow ribs than I really wanted to invest. Some version of me along the line is going to have to invest in a little bit thinner gauge solder so that we're not left with those big old gloppy balls on here, and maybe even a different tip for my torch. The original idea was to get this to blend in perfectly, and had I had more time and made myself a shop-made tool to be able to get the hollow grind on the bottom side of my hollow rib, I might have been able to do that. Still probably would be able to achieve it, but not on the timeline that I'm looking to achieve, because this gun is getting traded for a hunt at the end of February, and I really would like for it to be complete. So I decided to file in some nice straight lines along the contours of our hollow rib here. Still need a little bit cleaning up. Definitely needs to be finish polished, but it'll add a nice little stylistic element to it that wasn't in the initial plan, but still going to look good. Which brings us to my torment for today, everybody's favorite double gun related activity of smoking in parts and endlessly draw filing them. Both our hollow rib and our top rib came from Ellis Brown, the man who quite literally wrote the book on the subject. And he's given me some tips and tricks along the way as well. Third edition out now. Greatly appreciate everything that he's done, especially taking the time to write these books, because it is a piss poor wizard that never teaches the magic. To that end, I've got a newly minted gunsmith in the shop today who's having me teach him how to do color case hardening, another service that we offer here. And there's only a couple thousand people left on the planet that still know how to do it the old-fashioned way. And I'm one of them. So for the next several days, it's just going to be me blowing smoke at parts and filing it in. Just like with our soldering, make sure that you have your face right above the smoke. Get a big old whiff of that. But we get nice black soot all the way along our part. And then all the shiny parts get draw filed out until it fits nice and seamlessly. Then we get to solder this in, and future me gets to curse present me.
Yeah, it's got to be just block. We got to take off this rail. Yeah, does he want this to be threaded or not? Okay, then the rail has to come off.
Once again, I did the lion's share of the bulk removal on the belt sander, which allows us to make mistakes faster. Want to be efficient about this and make our critical failures in the morning, or at least before happy hour starts.
Well, it depends on how short he wants.
No point in spending all day doing good work only to screw it all up right before quitting time.
I could literally face it off right out there. It's a half complete. Yeah, so it's 720 pounds, it's 5. Yeah, it's probably pretty close to getting the bottom.
Every so often we clean off the soot just to make sure that we're not fitting the smoke instead of fitting the part.
So he just wants to get rid of that. screw hole is where the face will be.
So it's come to my attention that Gen Z, the Zoomers, are not happy with the current state of affairs because they've only lived through like 2 economic collapses and a pandemic and a bunch of other terrible things. Didn't even have to really live through Justin Bieber, but they're still down about life. And it occurs to me it's probably because they don't realize that beautiful double guns such as this exist. So if there's a young person in your life, maybe let them know that double guns are a thing, and it's a thing that they're able to own, and maybe they'll feel better about themselves in the world that we all live in. Or, just hit the like button. That's cool too. Same. Good news, everyone. We've got our top rib and our bottom rib soldered in now. Bad news is there's a lot of mass here that heat loves to flow through, so when we soldered on the top rib, we kind of unsoldered the bottom rib. But we got that fixed, and my solder work is getting better. Little by little every day, we're learning new things. Hopefully those of you that are following along at home doing your own project are advancing at the same rate. Because according to the gospel of Tebow, we have not been called upon to suck. That's Tim Tebow's gospel. Now that this is on, we're going to go ahead and trim the barrel, trim our top rib to length on the barrels. Without getting too far into that, we've got a nice 11-degree crown on there, which all the precision shooters agree is going to be our most accurate crown. Not that it matters, I'm only worried out to about 100 yards with this. There is a reason why the ELR guys do not choose side-by-side rifles as their weapon of choice. Once that's done, we're going to move back here to where we got the tightest 80 grit polish that you ever did see. Got most of my file marks out, where we can drop down our quarter rib so that it meets the action. We're about a 1/4 inch too high most of the way down. We're going to do that with the mill. Not that I couldn't do it by hand, but 1, I want it done right, and 2, ain't nobody got time for that. We'll be finishing that up with a file and making it look pretty. Then after that, all we got to do is finish polish, get some sights on this guy, and send it off to bluing. So eyes, ears, move your beers. today we will be doing some niter bluing. Inside of our Lyman Big Dipper casting furnace here, we have our niter bluing salts. Now, Brownell sells this. Well, they say that they sell it about once every year or two. It's actually in stock. But really, it's just potassium or ammonium nitrate, which you can get at your local ranch and garden store off of Amazon. It's sold as stump remover. Get stump remover, not stump killer. Stump killer is copper sulfite, and getting that stuff up this hot will mess you up like polio. Don't do it. So get your stump remover, and what we do is we are going to have a reaction that is largely due to heat. There's not much going on in here chemically. And we can put our steel pins and screws into our cauldron here that will bubble, toil, and trouble. And and at different temperatures, it's going to turn different colors. We're just going to have to be diligent about checking it every couple of seconds. The directions, if you actually feel like reading them, says bring it up to the appropriate temperature for the appropriate color that you want, and let it sit for 45 minutes. But ain't nobody got time for that. So we're just going to be impatient and check on it every so often as it comes up to temperature. And if we're real lucky, we can get at this extremely bright and vibrant electric blue color. Now, why do we do that? Well, the same reason why we had those stupid little LED valve stem covers and windshield washer sprayers on our cars when we were kids. It makes it go faster. 5 horsepower right there in the pot. So we're just barely starting to change color there, and it's about damn time. We're starting to pick up a slight straw color to it. It's back in the soup. Now, if you're really good at this, you can get the same thing with the blowtorch, but I always end up just melting things or blowing right past my color and have to start all over. If you do blow past your color, you can always polish it back off. There we go, starting to get a bit of a bronze. And try it again as much as you want. It's a very superficial, it's a very delicate finish, it's very surface level. So we do hammers and triggers, but just knowing that it's going to wear off over time. The pins and screws, generally they're countersunk just a little bit, so they'll stay bright and vibrant a little bit longer, especially if you take care of your toys. Got a nice bronze there. Starting to move into purple. There we go, starting to pick up a little bit of a purple hue to it. I want to say blue hits at about 540. That's degrees Frankenstein, not science. A little bit deeper purple. Move to a light purple. Got a nice deep vibrant purple now. Which, if that's your favorite color, you can stop here. I want blue. Starting to turn blue there. If your favorite tractor store and Amazon is all sold out of this, you can also go find your buddy that has some strongly held beliefs about the government. He probably has a bunch sitting around too. There we go. We're starting to get into a darker blue. A couple more seconds and we should be there. That's about the color that I'm looking for. So to arrest the process, we quench in water. And then dunk them in oil so that they don't rust. Then we start the process all over with our next pins. Just the other day, we went and color cased the action for our 4570 African Double. We didn't get great video of this, which is our first priority, of me doing all this high-end work on it and getting these great colors, which is of course our first priority, because my cameraman was a little bit busy taking care of customers. Our first priority. But we did get some good color out of this, which is indicative of steel from this era and looks a lot like what you would have seen from an original Parker color casing or a Winchester, anything done in that early 1900s. We did, however, get some great film of niter bluing screws, which adds a real nice pop to it. We're also done with the refinishing of our forend and got the color cased iron put in there. And not that you're going to see it terribly often, but those niter blued screws really do add a nice pop to it. The next thing that we need to concern ourselves with is recoil management. Now, we do have about 7.5 pounds barrel hanging out on the front of this, which is going to do a lot to save your shoulder and also the extremely delicate wrist on this very nice piece of furniture that we've got. But we can do a little bit better. This is a mercury recoil reducer. It is 16 ounces, the heaviest one that C&H makes, and it's going to fit right in the back of this stock. Now, because the wrist is delicate, the rest of the stock is delicate too, and I spent a lot of time on it, and it would absolutely break my heart if I sent a drill bit careening right through the side of it. So to prevent that, we have this jig. Fits right on there, and will guide our 7/8 inch Forstner bit, which I'm apparently the only one that knows what that is, right down the center line of the stock, preventing it from breaking. And also, it is perfectly sized so that the recoil tube will fit in there snugly and not wobble about. They were nice to us. If we ever have to get it back out, there's a threaded hole in there so we can put a screw on it and give it a good old jerk. Nice thing about this jig is the holes are spaced exactly perfect for a recoil pad. I mean, not the Packmeyer that we're using, but a recoil pad. All right, we are bottomed out on our Forstner bit, which has never happened to me before. And we can move over to our novelty size 7/8 bit and use up all of our careful. And hopefully this one will be long enough. Hey, look at that, miracle of miracles. Our guide is still lined up. All right, I'm going to call that deep enough. Now, I could just hammer this thing in, but I used up all my Brave today already, so I think we'll go do some sanding on the inside of this with a dowel rod, just so that it moves in smoothly, because I do not want to split this stock by getting the big hammer out. And if it sticks out just a little bit too far, I can always take a little bit out of the inside of our recoil pad and then refill that in with something else to hold it in place. Don't want this moving, just want the mercury inside. See you in a bit. All right, so this has only cost me the better part of an hour and about half a sheet of 120 grit paper, but we are almost done. And it's been not at all tedious. But it has been worth it, because it fits in there exactly. We can put our recoil pad back on. It's not critical that you use the stuff with cocoa butter, but it helps. Oh, yeah. Ta-da! Now I've got an appropriate amount of mass in the back of our stock, and as soon as my rear sling swivel stops persisting in its absence, we'll be ready to finish this and put it back on the gun. Hope you guys learned something from watching this. If you have some spare time and you know something that somebody else doesn't, please share that with them. It doesn't have to be machining or woodwork or gunfuckery, but if you know something that you can pass on to the younger generation, even if it's a practical exercise on how to give a proper wedgie, share it with them. They need it. Keep telling everybody it's going to be a good day, and as proof, my long-lost sling swivels and sights, which are the last 4 parts that I need for this job, finally showed up. Now, I haven't gotten any better at soldering, but I also haven't gotten any worse. If we're extremely lucky, the barrels will not unsolder themselves while I put this one on, but I'm still a little nervous, so I brought all of you guys along just in case I need some help. All right, well, still more cleanup than I was hoping for, but less than I expected. Someday I'll go to soldering college and I'll figure this out. I'll let you know how that turns out. We'll be moving on to installing the rear sling swivel next, and that I'm a little bit better at. But hey, it's all about learning. We're doing this together and we're having fun. All right, we got our front sling swivel installed and cleaned up, and it's even cool to the touch, and it's even more or less centered. But it's like a tattoo. If you don't like where it's at, you can always move it when it's done, right? Now that that's all done, we're going to install our rear sling swivel. Got the one with the extra long shank on it because I do not want this gun getting dropped just because the wood pulled away from the screw head. It's going to be a 2-step process. First one involves just a regular drill bit to drill all the way down into the stock. And the second one is this handy dandy tool where the second and third steps here are for cutting in for our base. Leaves a nice clean hole and gives it a real professional appearance on our European style sling swivel. Now, if you'll remember previously, we installed a recoil reducer in the back of this stock, and I did not remember exactly where it lived. So discretion being the better part of valor, I decided to remove it. Now, to be a man, don't let anybody ruin your day, ruin it yourself, but still, the hazmat guys already don't like me, and I didn't want 16 ounces of mercury floating around the floor, letting the dogs track through it. Using the most accurate measuring device we have in the shop, the Mark I eyeball, we centered up our hole on the stock and we placed it far enough forward so it's not going to interfere with our stock screw. The blue tape is going to help us with chip out, so hopefully that'll hold everything down and we won't leave a nasty wood splinter peeling up when we're all done. So we have a nice, clean, beautiful appearance there. Now this is going to come back out. We're going to do our final layer of finish on the stock, close in all the pores on our checkering, and do our final polish. And just as a side note, when I was drilling out for that sling stud, I did get into where the mercury reducer lives, so made a good decision there. So it's time to cut in the sights. And you don't get a lot of chances to do this correctly. As a matter of fact, you get one, which is not a lot of chances to do it right. The big thing to think about is where you want to put the sight. Well, we've got a taper here, and we have to take that into consideration when we do our sight math for our front sight height, but that gets cut second, so I decided that that didn't really matter. And then I remembered, hey, this surface is parallel to the water table, which means it's parallel to the line of bore. So anywhere in here is just fine to put our sights. So let's put them where we think that they look best, which is right about there. Then I thought, we're making a fine double gun. Let's not reinvent the wheel. We can just look at some of the finest guns ever made and see where they put their rear sight, which is right about there. And then it occurred to me, I have to move my end mill, my dovetail cutter, all the way across the barrels, and it would really ruin what's been a pretty good day if I cut into my barrels. So I measured how far down I'm gonna have to cut and brought it back as far as I can, longer sight radius, more accuracy, without cutting into my barrels, which turns out is right about there. So let's cut these in. All right, we've got our dovetail cutter in now. These are at very, very low speeds, 500 RPM. And as luck would have it, the sights that I chose required the same cutter as a Novak sight. All right, that was terrifying. This is a 1906 Parker Brothers. Oh, before I lock it in, I am really super duper proud of this little embellishment right there. Niter blued with a brass ring.
This is way more than I was expecting.
Every pin's been niter blued, every internal piece high polished.
Quit acting like you're gonna grab it.
Let's go ahead and take it.
Oh shit. Wow.
Those are the rounds that it's been regulated with, so I know for a fact that it shoots dead nuts with those.
That's unbelievable. Thank you so much. This is too much.
I'm hitting a squirrel.
One big squirrel.
Yeah, there's. Shot over the top on the second shot. There's no recoil.
after a night of plinking with the 4570, hanging out, having some delicious barbecue and good conversation, we headed out the next morning and went on our bison hunt. We got a couple of really nice bulls. One was rogue that we had to chase down, and it presented a nice little challenge, and always a good time out there with those guys.
All right, so here we are at the ass end of another successful hunt. Having built a very fine gun for some very fine friends out at the Clover Cliff Ranch and Clover Cliff Bison Company. And we get to do it on America's 250th birthday. And I can't think of a more violently American way to spend a weekend. It's so American that I pissed red, white, and blue. Now, the doctor says that might be prostate cancer, and I told her to shut her common mouth. There's nothing about me that's pro-state.